Story, glad that you could join us today and do our weekly collaboration. Always excited for when we have this opportunity to have conversations, talk, and then bring those discussions to the larger audience.
Amen. Amen. And I think we got some thought-provoking conversation for the day for the people. And so hopefully it'll motivate them in the right way.
All right. Well, I'm ready to go.
Amen. Okay, so today, I guess we want to start off the conversation on, policing in America. Has America had enough of police officers? And maybe it's time to have some peace officers patrolling our communities. And so I know we were just recently watching the Anthony Toledo body cam footage of the 13-year-old boy that was killed by police. Recently, we had, and of course, I'm at the point where I'm like really getting tired of watching the videos. Not like it's, I'm tired to the point where it's like, oh, this again, but like it's a heavy, it's a heavy weight. To constantly keep seeing this, it's a very heavy weight. So when people hear that, I hope you guys understand what I'm saying when it's like, it's a very heavy weight to constantly see people murdered. But as I was saying, we have the video out of Columbus, Ohio. I think she was 16-year-old little girl that was killed by police. And back to Chicago, there's 22-year-old Latinx male father just recently killed. Everybody's aware of Andre Brown, father as well, just recently killed, shot in the back of the head. There was the Isaiah Brown story we were going to do, and maybe we'll get back around to that. Fortunately, he did not pass, but he was shot 7 times and is fighting for his life. We're all aware of, George Floyd last year, but in between the time of George Floyd's murder and the conviction of Derek Chauvin, we've had over 150 more unarmed killings of civilians. And so I want to talk with you about, our community. Want to talk with you about like where do we go? How do we, I think, first begin to heal? Because I think there has to be healing before we can do anything. The old adage is hurt people. So what do you think? Where does our community go? What do we do in the face of all of this?
That's interesting that you start there.
Sorry about that. I'll try and pause this. Mute it.
No worry. It's tough because I think you're absolutely right. We are looking for kind of action on the other side, right? So you want the end of police brutality to stop, government sanctioned murder to stop. And so we're pushing on that side to say, okay, this needs to stop happening. But we have to be accountable for our side of what we can control, right? I mean, we didn't ask to be killed or shot or whatnot. But as you were saying, hurt people. Okay, yeah. We do have to figure out how to begin to heal and work together so that we can get back to more of a village stewardship and mentality so that we can take care of our own. And I think that's really on all facets, right? You talked about policing. Police are supposed to protect and serve. That's exactly what we need in our communities, right? And I think that our protection and our service needs to come from people that look like us. So I think that's one of the things that we need to do. But even yet and still, that can still be problematic as you have as Ice Cube and NWA, black black cop showing out for the white cop, you know, so you have those things too, where, you know, they're put in this position where they're going to, you know, sometimes be more brutal than white officers. But I think that's really where it has to start. We've got to start working on restoring our sense of community, our sense of identity. You know, these, in the case with this little boy, right? Like my daughter is 9, so, or she'll be 10 this year. I mean, that's like 3 years. You know, I mean that's a child. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah.
And so why was the child out? Why did the child have a gun? You know, where's the parents and the adults in the village and all that? So I think that is a huge piece of it. And then at a larger piece, you know, what is happening with, you know, our Black boys primarily. When you think about, you know, south side of Chicago and the ultra violence there, that, you know, they're growing up. And then for the most part, their only recourse is into the gang life and, you know, murder and brutality and criminality and everything else. So, you know, how do you break that? You know, they're not born with a gun. They're not born thugs. They're not born gangsters, not born killers, whatever, drug dealers, whatever the case may be, right? They're born, you know, to parents that love them. They're babies. They're held. You know, they've got a bottle in their mouth. And as they grow, there's this transition that happens at some point in time where now they're out in the street and they're no longer looked at as, you know, that's someone's baby, that's someone's child, that's someone's niece, nephew. And so that, I think we have to really identify that and how it is that we as a community can allow our young, because they still are young, to get to a quick age, you know, early teens, sometimes preteens, and then separate to they're no longer a part of the community when they're actually kind of operating against the community and making their own community.
Wow. How do we do that? It's an interesting question. So I know personally, I grew up in you know, the inner city in Chicago, and
let me ask, it was different for you. How are you not in there? How are you still alive? Right?
By the grace of God. Like, and no, that's not a you know, euphemism. I mean that literally, by the grace of God. Yeah, you know, it was a violent you know, city even when I was growing up, but things are different now, you know. And as I look back over history, right, I see that violence has progressed in America, you know, to a point where I feel like at any minute it's going to be like some dystopic, you know, movie where, you know, it's like gangs of people just like, you know, out for themselves, you know, and, you know, kind of fighting against just chaos, you know. Because if you think about it, and, you know, you say mid 50s, early 60s, you know, we had street gangs kind of start to come on the scene, and it was like, oh, protecting, you know, their neighborhood. And like, really, that's what they did. You know, it was like, all right, people are out robbing, you know what I'm saying, you know, the old ladies in our neighborhood. So the young kids got together. And that's where, you know, and a lot of people don't know the history of this, but that's where a lot of street gangs formed from. If you think about, dang it, what is their name? They're in New York, something Angels. Guardian Angels in New York, right? They were one of the ones that was kind of able to maintain without, you know, switching criminal or whatever. But a lot of the street gangs that we know and we're familiar with started out with all best intentions, right? And then it kind of came to this, you know, kind of, you know, macho type deal, and, you know, they're fist fighting and, you know, knives and stuff like that. And, you know, it's been this steady progression, right? And I think it's reached a tipping point. You know, violence in America has reached a tipping point where somebody has to be willing to stand up and, you know, surrender, you know, and unfortunately, we don't have that mentality in our country. We don't have that mentality to say, like, you know, I'll surrender. We America does not know surrender. I mean, we may ease up a little bit, but we don't know surrender. You look at Vietnam, no surrender, just like, all right, we're gonna pull out, but no, you know, surrender. We're not gonna capitulate. Even now, what we see them pulling back in this Afghanistan war, you know, has been going on. People don't even know why we even over in Afghanistan no more. Don't even know why we even started there, you know. So we don't know that word, you know, like surrender, quit, like, okay, you win, but somebody has to do that, you know. And we have to realize that we're seeing the beginning of this, where when you start thinking back, this started with really, you know, this started with Emmett Till, you know, even though it was happening way before Emmett Till. But this fight for us, our survival, our community, our lives, you know, to be recognized as a person, you know, he was that linchpin, right? He's that first linchpin. And now George Floyd's that second linchpin, right? But what's happening is with these linchpins is you're creating a chain, you know, of events. And either that chain is gonna, you know, link, you know, you could use a chain for a lot of different things, is my point here, you know, but these are linchpins in time. And either we're gonna, you know, break this chain, or we're gonna keep on adding links to it, and it's gonna get longer. And then it's like, what's the chain ultimately gonna be used for, you know? Because the street gangs used to use them to fight, you know. Is this going to end up turning into, you know, more violence, you know?
Well, how could it not? Because if that's what you're saying, is that it's a linchpin, and if you're looking at George Floyd as being the next linchpin, you know, there have been, you know, and we're mixing a lot of different topics here, so I'm gonna.
Yeah, I know. I'm sorry.
I'm
sorry. I'm gonna get back. I got the notes. I'm gonna get back on point. But my mind just get to going like.
But if you're saying that these are the linchpins, and it's like, how are we going to use the metaphoric chain? Well, to me, I honestly don't see anything changing, right? So, Obama, you know. You had those, oh, we're in a post-racial, you know, America. Yeah, okay, whatever. It got worse, right? Then you have Trump, and then, you know, folks feel even more free to show their prejudice, bigotry, and racism. And now you've got Biden, and it's still ramping up, right? In the middle of a pandemic. So, and it's not just like you said, you know, the United States has a history of violence. And, you know, I think where I made the connection with Vietnam is it doesn't matter whether it's the armed forces or the cities of, you know, in the neighborhoods and South Side of Chicago, or police brutality on Black and brown Americans. We're just a violent society all the way around. And as you integrate, you're going to integrate and start to imitate and do the things, good and bad, of that society that you're in. And those things are going to be a little bit more glaring because of the lack of resources and support and everything else. So, to me, I think that it's just going to continue on. And the reason why I have such a pessimistic view of it is George Floyd died. Everyone comes out. They march, right? Yeah, Black Lives Matter. And unfortunately, that was co-opted by other groups, right? Feminism, LGBTQI community, immigration, AAPI community. Everyone else has kind of co-opted it. And really what it was about heterosexual Black men being murdered, right? And now it's everything else except for a focus on Black men. And the proof is in the pudding, right? You go and you look at the grants of these organizations and companies. You know, you don't really see grants for Black men. You see them for Black women. You see them for the LGBTQI community. You see $50 million for the AAPI community. You in their, few videos of, harsh language, assault, and I'll call it, some of the assaults look bad, right? But they're not, being shot in the back of the head by the cops, right? I mean, we're talking about two very different things here, but one gets $50 million, and here we are still talking about, do we get anything, or we're still doing studies, right? Or y'all need to pull yourself up from bootstraps and just do better. So then we just get chastised. So because of all those things, I honestly don't see it changing. I would like to say that, there are some of us in the community that are trying to make some gains and find some ways to come together. And then through that process, which is going to take years, then we can start to work on making those changes. But we're so fractured as our own folks. You have said it a few times, Black people aren't a monolith. And because we're not a monolith and we all have all these different competing interests, that we don't really have a lot to stand together on. I was listening to a podcast earlier, and the gentleman was talking about the fact that when you think about who's being killed, it's our younger Black men. It's not the civil rights generation, right? They don't really have anything to fear from the cops. They're not shooting old men, right? So they need to keep their pensions and their retirement. Those that are in, politics or in high levels, right? They don't want to lose what they have, because that you can be blackballed and blacklisted out of different spaces that we're trying to ascend to. So you're going to go along to get along, or your speaking out is going to be more symbolic, more than resulting in actual consequence, right? Boycotting, things of that nature, calling for people to really invoke change, or people to lose their jobs, or things like that, right? Qualified immunity, all those things that we talk about. So that's really where I see the issue, because we're not a monolith and we have all these competing interests, Black women, LGBTQI, that we're so fractured in that way, and we're looking at it, there's no cohesive glue where we come together, right? So people are trying to get in where they fit in, and then monetize on whatever they can monetize, and make the best out of it.
So I want to kind of go a little bit into something you just touched in on there. I'm a Christian, I'm a Christian. I believe in, the Holy Trinity. I believe in God. I believe in Jesus the Christ. I believe that he, manifested in the flesh, died on the cross, rose third day. I'm a Christian. I love me some Jesus. But I ain't got no problem with listening to Farrakhan, right? Mm. The man's smart. He's wise. You know what I'm saying? He's an elder. And, I quite often listen to him. But I often
denounce him. He's anti-Semitic. I said, you need to watch out now. You need to denounce him. He's anti-Semitic. So,
that's what I was finna get at right there, right? Like, he's always, the go-to boogeyman that if you're Black in America and you want to secede, you have to, separate yourself from him, right? Like, no, you can't say, oh, well, I agree with, some things he say. Like my pastor, he taught me listen, he taught me to eat the meat, spit out the bones, right? So yeah, I can go and listen to Farrakhan. He's a Muslim. That's fine. You know what I'm saying? But I know how to, take the good out of it and say, all right, I'm not, kind of down with this, this other part of it or whatever. Right. But in America, we seem, and even in our own community, it seems to be an all or nothing sum game. Like,
right.
How does that, how does that help us? How does that progress us, or does it?
Oh, it's a trick. So that's the great trick, right? So typically what's happened over our history, our American history, is our leaders that have ascended have either been murdered or they have been neutered. And so where they have not assassinated Farrakhan, what they have done is assassinated his character, right? And they made it to where anyone who is going to align with or agree with, we are going to stifle those folks and call them anti-Semitic, and not take any of the nuance, or like you said, take the meat from the bone, and call truth for truth when it is, and call no one is 100% correct in what they say, what they believe. But with that, we are not allowed to do that. So as soon as there is a threat to the dominant society and dismantling these institutions of white supremacy and racism, then well, you know what? You got to get rid of that person. And if you don't, then you can't go, right? Well, that means that my kids can't eat. And I went to school for this, and I went and I worked here, and I've been a champion for that. And I don't want to lose that opportunity. So, okay, you know what? Fine. I'll do like Damon John Fubu, has done, and I'll go ahead and I'll denounce it, even though he said really nice things at DMX's funeral, right? And so you've got to do that, because now they will boycott you and not support you, right? And that happened to Nick Cannon, right? For his interview and whatnot. Now you're losing your own intellectual property, whiling out. And so that's how they have so much control over us. And it's dangerous, right? And so the only way that stops is if we stand up and say, you know what? You were our oppressor. You do not get to tell us how to no longer be oppressed by you.
I love that.
So if we agree or we think a certain way, we have every right to have that full thought, range of emotion, and we're going to go forward with that, right or wrong. That's all right. They can storm the Capitol building and do everything else. They're letting them out on probation. They're, not charging them. They're, it's not sedition. It's not treason. It's not any of these things. And yet, and still, we're being locked up for the very simplest things, and they're throwing away the key. Right?
Not even just locked up, murdered.
You think
without even a trial.
Yeah, you think about QAnon and all the other things that exist out there, and all the horrible things that most people say it is bad, but then you make excuses for it, or it's understand. Well, you've got to understand how middle America is thinking, and they're just feeling like this, that, and the other. And all of a sudden, there's all this empathy and sympathy for them. But wow, I mean, Jim Crow, slavery, redlining, yada, yada, yada. We go on to the present, government sanctioned murder, assassination of our leaders, FBI, just all, you name it, right? But then if we say or think anything, up, you got to go, you're done. So until we stand up and say, be one, and we're going to dig ourselves out of this, you know what I'm saying? And we're not going to take what you're saying as our way to maneuver out, then we're going to be where we're at.
So I want to connect two things with that. One, I believe that like what we're doing right now, this mashup is so important. And I've been watching, other brothers and sisters, do what we're doing in various forms, right? But what it ultimately boils down to is we're creating our own spaces, right? So that we start to become the employers, the check writers. And I think that's one of the problems. We're still beholden to the master for a check, and so then now he gets to dictate, what our voice is, how loud our voice can be, what our voice can say, what our actions can do. And I believe that is one of the most, and this kind of links back to Farrakhan. That is what frightens, white America. And when I say this, people, please don't take it as I'm like condemning all whites, because that's not who I am. When I say that, it's I'm talking about, like them Trump type folks. All right. So if you ain't like that, don't worry about it. Anyway, but I think that's what frightens white America is that, Black America will unite and begin to, build and create. And I think they, thinking they've always feared a backlash for, past deeds. But if they spent time to get to know us, they'd understand that that's not who we are, and I will speak.
I think they know exactly who we are. Then that's why they keep doing what they do, right? Is because there is no retaliation. Because no race on the face of the earth would not respond in that way. The Jewish people went after, the people that were murdering them, right? And
That is true. That is true.
Right? So, we're not doing that. And so even though we've made all of this progress and we have this pseudo freedom from slavery, right? We're not in chattel slavery anymore. We're still enslaved in so many different ways in this country, right? And really across the world in a lot of ways too, right? Because we're so as a people. And to me, that really is where the problem is. So they know we're not going to do anything about it, and we're not going to do anything because we haven't done anything about it. So we can keep on doing what we've been doing. Why do we have to get right? China can say, you know what, America, you guys can't say anything about us and what we're doing. You are treating black people, bad. You're killing them in the street. Your arm, your police, are doing all these different things. But China is doing some horrible things to Africans in Africa and Africans in China, right?
Yeah.
Call out the hypocrisy of America while they're still yet doing the exact same thing, right? So we as a people are just, hey, we're the most forgiving, right? Botham John, you've got, the judge comes off the bench and wants to give a murderer, right, a hug. Have you ever heard of such a thing?
Not at all. I got to be honest with you. Like I say, I love God, but that upsetted me. That really upsetted me. It's like, yeah. So, I mean, like, if that's where she felt, if that's what that judge felt, I feel like her timing was the worst. Look, go mail it to her in jail if that's how you feel. Set up a visit date and say, hey, I know, I slammed the hammer and this. Don't do it in the public eye for real.
Well, here's the thing. If you're going to do that, then be consistent. That can't have been her first murder trial, because if it was, you would have heard about it, right? If she would have hugged a black murderer who was convicted of murder.
Come on, bro, say it.
Woman, that would have been all local news, right?
I ain't going to stop you. Go ahead, say it.
So this isn't the first time that she has sentenced someone to murder, right? Or given the sentence for what they were found guilty of doing. So that showing of empathy, that again, that is who we are. We are the most forgiving people on the planet. That is wholesalely true. But that is why we continue to be abused in the way.
I'm going to tell you something, though. And I've thought long about Amber Geiger and that hug and the Bible and all of this and that, right?
Mm-hmm.
What that was, because I was a bit, like I said, perturbed about that, right?
Mm-hmm.
More than that judge kind of endorsing, her and what Botham's brother did and everything. What that really was about was endorsing law enforcement, forgiving law enforcement, and saying that, hey, law enforcement, is able to make a mistake. We can still embrace law enforcement and love law, because she at that time was, kind of the picture of, the off-duty cop, tired, just, that image they try to paint. And the judge was saying, kind of reinforcing that, hey, we're going to, spank law enforcement, but guess what? It's okay. We still love law enforcement, because we all understand, the relationship between the judge, the prosecutor, and the cop, and like I tell people, I grew up in the inner city, and I've seen it too many times. The only black person in the courtroom is a defendant, and the prosecutor and the defense attorney, that's the court-appointed defense attorney, they laughing and joking before the trial starts. They walking up to the bench, talking with the judge, everybody laughing, talking, and it's all fun and games. And now, the hammer come down, and now I'm supposed to believe that this is fair and impartial. So we've seen, kind of how this has played out. And I really believe that embrace was more of a, America. And I don't care what people say. Yeah, these judges, they get phone calls and they get told like, hey, do this and do that. And I believe some calls got made in this George Floyd case, watching and listening to that judge, some of the decisions he made. I know somebody picked up some powerful people, talked to him and made sure stuff went the way that they went because they didn't want to see this country torn apart. They know the violence, like you were just talking about how we're so forgiving. There's a limit to everything. And they know that. I think we were at that limit and we're very close to it. So calls get made.
Let me ask you a question. So
yeah,
saying, that okay, this is what exists. She came down and she gave the hug, right? And you were asking, how do we transition from making that change? And why I'm so pessimistic about it is you look at every institution up and down the hierarchy, this is where we're at, right? So you have, on the Republican side, Tim Scott, just saying after the rebuttal to the State of the Union, right? Oh, we're United States isn't racist. You got the vice president, right? Echoing the same sentiments. So we got the highest levels of our government saying, hey, you know what, we're not racist. We're watching murder on almost a daily basis. We have examples of, everything that's happening through our schools and everything else. We have our athletes like Herschel Walker. And hey, you know what? Americans don't need reparations. I don't need reparations. Black folks don't need reparations. But it's in a Zoom meeting in his house that looks like it's about 5,000 square feet, just in the piece that would fit in the camera. you know what I mean? But no, I don't need reparations. I've been fine. America's been good to me, right? And then you have the judge who was coming down and hugging. And even if she was encouraged to go ahead and make that sentence or pass that sentence, or she felt her hands were tied, right? As long as we feel like we have something to lose and we're not going to stand on our square and say, hey, that's wrong. It doesn't matter what the consequences are. If you take my livelihood, I'm still going to be congruent and speak the truth and act uprightly, then nothing can change, right? So it's not just, white people in the dominant society doing it, right? Institutions are ran, you take an institution of whatever it is, right? It's a machine. You plug the people in, and now it doesn't matter. White, Chinese, Black, Latino, it does not matter, right? Or your sexual orientation, your interest is to keep that institution, that engine running. And so if we don't disengage from the matrix, it's not going to change. And we have to hold our people accountable.
I totally agree with you. I am a stern believer in my Second Amendment rights. I don't play no games. Don't come messing with me. I don't play no games. Listen, our Lord and Savior taught us, one thing, Peter asked me, he said, Lord, how often should I forgive my brother? 7 times? You said, no, 7 times 70. As often as he keep asking you for forgiveness, keep forgiving him, right? Mm-hmm. And I think that, like most things in the Bible, people, they can be extremists with some things. They could take some things out of context and everything else, right? But when you pay attention, and I truly believe that words matter. Words matter. Words matter. They are big. I love words. Peter said, Lord, how often should I forgive my brother? Key word there is brother. He ain't say nothing about forgiving your enemy. Listen, if you trying to kill me, Jesus ain't say, oh, turn the other cheek when somebody trying to murder you, trying to wipe you out, genocide you, or anything else. People forget that Jesus told his disciples that they needed to get them some swords. And they was like, we got one right here. He was like, okay, that's good. Like, what you think a sword is for? It ain't for you to, go in the street and march and hold up and say, hey, we want freedom. No, you know what I'm saying? So, yeah, it's a time.
Jump in, Rev. because you said something that's really important, and you made another point earlier that I wanted to bring this back up. You're talking about the sword, right? And now you're being biblical and bringing in Bible verses and whatnot.
Sorry. Well, you know me, bro.
The dominant religion, I believe, is Christianity in this country still. True story.
Mm-hmm.
But you've got the black church of Christianity, and you have the white church of Christianity. You have evangelicals, and everything in between. Again, black folks are the most forgiving people on the planet and in the country. But we have white evangelicals. We have a lot of white Christians that definitely believe in war, right? And throughout, enforcing your might, it's might to have peace, right? So, we have two different ways that we are interpreting and maintaining our power or our existence. So we're just constantly forgiving and you murdered my baby, you did this to me, you did that to me, you've been oppressing us on every scale, and you parade us out there and just say, hey, y'all, we can't tear their stuff up, we just need to stay home and march peacefully, and that's what we need to do. And then on the other side, they're storming the Capitol, right? Now, nothing egregious to what's been happening to us is even comparable to what's happened to them, right? But they get empathy and they can storm the Capitol and not die from it, and not end up underneath the jail, right?
Hey, bro, let me. People can call me a conspiracy theorist if you want to, but prove me wrong is what I'm gonna tell you. Okay, first off, we see these families that are going through one of the most painful, moments of their lives. An officer has feloniously murdered their loved one. And then you see them on the TV saying, hey, let's protest peacefully, this and bruh, you know what this is, and like I say, them phone calls get made, them people come knock on that door and say, hey, listen, we know y'all finna do a civil suit. If you don't want us to fight this, forever, and you want to get, some type of retribution, tell these people to calm down. And that's what they do. Cause they know they listen, Ben Crump, bruh, I feel like he's a leech, you know what I'm saying? Tamir Rice's mother, come out talking about the brother. Look, you doing what you're doing, bro. That's fine. I ain't got nothing against you. But let's be honest about what's happening here. You know what I'm saying? It's deals being made in back rooms for this to happen. If we're honest about the Bible, you know what I'm saying, itself, bruh, we, black people, what did we get? We got the slave Bible where they ripped out 80-90% of it. You know what I'm saying? And then give us, a few scriptures that they want us to have that, put us into a docile, type of mentality. Now, when they want to go on, in Hollywood and do the Nat Turner story, and they got him up there reading and quoting the Bible. Come on, don't lie about it. That man didn't have a Bible like that because they wasn't letting us have Bibles like that. We had what was called slave Bibles where they ripped everything up out of it. You see what I'm saying? So it was, this is all ingrained behavior. And I think me and you kind of talked about this before where, you got the house and the field, you know what I'm saying? And it's like they've been playing this game. I don't know if you ever read the Willie Lynch letter, but if not, I highly suggest you read it. It's not,
and then I took it down, actually.
You read it before?
Oh, it used to sit in my house on my wall.
Okay. Well, so then you understand, the game that they play, you know what I'm saying? And they're still playing it. They're playing it on a much more sophisticated level now because, technology has improved, but it's still the same game. One thing Copass always say is the devil ain't got to change his tactics because they've been working all this time. You know what I'm saying? And so he's still using the same tactics, against us, and we keep falling for it. And it's until we start having honest conversations like this, telling the truth, addressing the truth, and calling stuff what it is, that people are going to start thinking differently and saying, hey, hold on, you're not going to keep on playing me against my brother. We have a problem, and this is one of the things we need to talk about too, is, partnerships in our community, how we're constantly clashing with one another, trying to do the same thing, but we won't, humble ourselves and say, oh, well, instead of being chief, I'll be co-chief, or instead of being chief, I'll be Indian, and we're going to work together and, build together and, like I said, create spaces for ourselves instead of always seeking the approval of another, nationality. And it's like, okay, that's fine. I ain't got nothing against white people. They got their own thing going, and ain't nobody telling them that, hey, you shouldn't, try and build together as white. Ain't nobody telling the Asians that they shouldn't try and build together as Asian. Ain't nobody telling the Jews that they shouldn't build together as Jews, or the Italians that they can't, all of them. If you look all across America, you got a Chinatown, a little Italy, a little this, little that. Where's little Africa at? We ain't got no little Africa towns. You ain't finna nowhere in America. I ain't never heard of little Africa, big Africa, anything else over here. Little Ethiopia.
I think there's an immigration portion that exists, right? You've got, pockets of Ethiopians and Somali, communities and things like that. But what I submit to you is we don't have foundational Black American societies, banks, schools, those types of institutions. For those that were directly brought in descendants of slavery here in America, that doesn't exist. Yes.
Even with within that, right? In order for there to be a Chinatown, right? The city endorses that. The city gets behind that. You know what I'm saying? And co-signs off on that and says like, hey, this is cool. You go in, if you go to Vegas, go to Chinatown down there, you're gonna see the buildings are adorned, in Asian, type of architecture. The city signs off on that, says, yeah, okay, this is cool. They create a space for them where, there's remnants and, sentiments of home for them. There's nothing, even if we do have pockets of communities, we have nothing that is, systemically endorsed by this country to say, hey, we're really promoting, descendants of African slaves. We have nothing to say. They haven't even apologized, and on a proper scale for what they've done to us and what they continue to do to us. And here's my thing, where I don't want listeners to get lost at. It's not just America. And I think, because America holds a very prominent seat, we get the spotlight, but the diaspora is large. We have Brazil, all up and down South America, Europe. The diaspora is large. We're everywhere. And there's a lot of apology and a lot of reconciliation that needs to be done across this globe. And these people, they act on a global scale and we think on a local scale. And, so President Obama and President Biden and President Trump, they're dealing with the Prime Minister of Europe. They're dealing with, I think he's a president. I don't know what they call him in China or whatever, but they're dealing with, global leaders, and they're making global deals, and they're doing things on global levels. And we're still fighting for on community levels against one another. When if we stop fighting on a community level, we can start reaching out to one another on a global level. If the people here in Bremerton, in Kitsap County, I'll put it that way, if we stop fighting against one another and we get on one page, we can reach out to the people down in Oregon, and they can reach out to the people over in Wyoming, and we can start networking, and then we can start reaching over to South America and into Europe. back to the motherland, and we can start doing things on a global scale. Because I'm going to tell you, just here in America, and I know you know this, we're the largest spending block, within the country. We have the most spending power in this country. We spend more money than anybody else. It's just about a matter of where we choosing to spend it at. And so if we start, connecting our minds together and putting our dollars together, we can build, a true space for ourselves, and we can start to affect policy where they now start to really truly recognize us. We can get things done like the AAPI, where they are now a protective race. We've been getting slaughtered since day one. And you mean to tell me we can't get listed as a protective race in this country? Of all people, we can't get listed as a protective race? That is insane. But the AAPI community, they're linked. They're still linked back home, and their dollars are linked. And so they have, power, because that's what, this country and this world is kind of built on, is dollars, and it moves things. So if we want to start moving things, we got to stop, lining up to buy Jordans. We got to stop lining up, for Black Friday and running over each other to get, a 25% off TV. Like, no, make the one you get work just a little bit longer. So what if you got to smack it on the side every 9 and 10, and do, but if we keep fighting each other, for the scraps, and for what we think is valuable, we ain't gonna never really have anything that's truly valuable, because, we're fighting over the temporary. You see people like literally lining up in Black Friday for a TV that might last you 2-3 years, if that. But in 6 months they're gonna have out, a 16K. You just got the 2K, 4K. 6 months they're gonna have the 16K. You're gonna be sitting there kicking yourself like, oh man, I want the 16K. Look, they showing the same stuff on the TV, the same shows. It ain't us that they showing on the TV that we fighting to get. It don't make no sense, but I digress. I'm sorry, I went off topic again.
You have said a lot. So, I would, you kind of answered your own question in there, because you went really macro and global. And then,
I'm sorry. I get heated sometimes, bro. Like,
I'm not going to respond to all this. But you kind of answered your own question as far as, where society is, and then where the Black community is. And so as you were first kind of going down, kind of making your points, what I'll say is yes, an apology. What was the word you used? Reconciliation. People can apologize and actually mean it and be sincere. How does that change our situation? And so to that end, I really do believe it does start with community. And where you left off was great, because that's one of the places that we need to fix, right? Now, I don't, I think you might be misquoting some of the stats on our economic power, right? I mean, we're 13% of the country, so I can't see how we would have more economic power than 65% of the white community, right? I think that's just statistically not possible. But we do have, we have a tremendous amount of money and power. The problem is again, through integration and valuing the capitalist, way that we find ourselves here in America, right? We're going to emulate because we want to be a part of, right? And now, when you think about, racism and classism, and talk about the slave Bible, I think all of those things go together, right? So you got Reaganomics and trickle-down economics, right? And those things work the same way. So if you have a slave Bible, and as you have stripped language, and we weren't able to read, we had to teach ourselves how to read, and coming through all of that. And then when all we hear and then start to read is a slave Bible, well, we're going to pass those beliefs, traditions, cultures, norms, all those things on to our kids. and our kids. So those things aren't going to change, immediately. And it's going to be tremendously slow. I mean, you still have, black churches that have, white Jesus, in their church. And, there's a lot of inconsistencies in the black church, in our own history, things that have taken place in, the cradle of the world. And it's told from a Eurocentric, viewpoint, right? Because we don't have that, but we're still following what we were taught generations ago. And so those things aren't quickly reversed. And so first, people have to wake up and realize, hey, you're taught wrong. This is, you've got to stop here, figure out what the truth is, and then go forward, right? And when you try to do that, and you give that, you give people cognitive dissonance, and it's hard, right? I mean, I go back to that Matrix analogy. The one guy that came out, he sold his folks out so that he could go back in. Man, just put me back in the Matrix. Life was good. Give me my fake steak, that's the life that I want to live. It's too hard out here, right? I'd rather be this way than to not have those things. And so when you talk about Black Friday and us, it's Jordans. Like, I don't own a pair of Jordans, but there are other ways where I'm enslaved to a capitalistic society, right? I'm not the best as far as economic sovereignty, financial literacy, and many of us are not, right? And we don't know what we don't know. Tax loops and how to take advantage of the tax code, who to call, how to get business loans or grants. All of these things are here, right? Saving your money, instant gratification, investments. All of these things are missing. And so we've been taught to value something else, and that is what gives us value. So then it shows itself in our music. It shows itself in the other pieces of our art. It shows itself in the church, right? From what I was taught was, hey, Sunday was the only day that, we had to ourselves. It was the black church. It was the place where we could be important. We could dress up for the Lord and put on our Sunday best. And we treated each other as people, right? You work for the white man. I'm thinking about, the 20s, 30s, 40s, 50s on up, yeah. Right? And you're serving someone else, right? And so it doesn't matter how good you look, you're made less of. So the church is the one place where you could dress up on your Sunday best, and you had, that importance, right? You had deacons and deaconesses. You had the leaders in the church. And so that was a place where we can elevate ourselves. And so even that starts to get lost in the sauce. And so now Easter Sunday comes up, and you got folks spending $200, $300, $400. It's a fashion show. I'm going to church on Easter for the fashion show. Some people actually do that. So
yeah. Oh yeah.
You know what I mean? And so that has to be reversed. So we could talk about, Pookie and Ray Ray's wearing Jordans and everything else, but then you got the educated black church that's, putting on their Sunday best and buying $200 Easter hats. You know what I'm saying? And $400 suits and wearing I got my my burgundy gaiters. Whatever it is, there's that mentality of oppression and enslavement is so ingrained that really does have to be broken in order for us to move together. And we can look at and say, hey, I'm an educated person. Pookie and Ray Ray need to stop doing what they're doing. And then Pookie and Ray Ray could be like, hey, y'all up in, Negroes is doing this, and that. And none of us are on one accord ready to grow together, right?
Brother.
Robert Dent.
Is that you?
Yeah, I'm sorry about that.
Oh. It scared me. But bro, you are so right. And I've spoken on that too. Listen, I think I might be a black sheep type, reverend, because I say stuff that people don't want said, and it's like, but I'm gonna be real with you. You know what I'm saying? There's a lot of air of pretentiousness going on within our community. Some people don't want to see change because they are profiting off of it themselves. Our own people, are profiting and, off of it. And not all of it is monetary profits. Some people are profiting off of it because they feel as if they have a certain, social status within the community, and if people start to wake up, and get out of their deep sleep, then they'll see, people for who they really are, and they'll lose their status. Some people are financially, exploiting the community, but there's a lot of exploitation amongst ourselves, and that there to me is the most infuriating, one of the most infuriating things, that I find within the community is how, one will exploit the other, with no shame, but they won't exploit the other man. They'll exploit the brother man, but they won't exploit the other man. And then, they'll support the other man, but won't support the brother man. Just a whole bunch of little intricacies that's going on. Like I was telling you, I've always been autodidactic. That don't mean that like I'm, because I've always been autodidactic, I don't, think in a particular structured way like most people who have went to higher education. But at the same time, I'm not no dummy, and I know how to teach myself different things or whatever, and so when I speak, it like kind of goes all over the place, like you just seen all at once. But the point is, there's no space really in our community for my type. It's like, oh well, you didn't go to this school or that school. Like, no, I didn't, and I don't want to. I'm not gonna get on my money. You know what I'm saying? I can go find this information out for myself. I can teach myself. I can do it for myself. At one time that was okay. Like you said, we used to teach ourselves to read. We used to, self-educate ourselves, and there was a sense of pride about that. And we were applauded amongst ourselves. Now, if I don't have a degree, from like some university or whatever, or some Bible school or whatever, then, I'm not accepted. I don't care. I know what the truth is, and I'm gonna keep telling it. And I know a lot of people ain't gonna like that, but hey.
Well, and that's why, as we were talking about it earlier, I'm more pessimistic, right? If you take the NOI, the nation, you're Christian, I'm Christian, so we don't belong, to that organization. However, that organization is or was, I think, more powerful in the past, but they had schools, and just a really strong structure of and producing, really doing the things that we want to see for Black people. To me, I thought they had and have a really good model. The thing is we're always going to separate ourselves on these different things. And again, we're taking our points from the dominant society, right? So it's like, okay, so you're a nation of Islam, we're Christians. We can't go along and find a way to work together because that's what you believe from a religious standpoint, right? But you believing that we need to teach ourselves, that we need to prop ourselves up, that we need to, create entrepreneurship and business and hire each other and teach each other. Those things are universal, and we're not doing that, right? Not only are we not doing that with, let's say, the NOI, we're not even doing that with our own, Christian churches, at a local level. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So, you think about, childcare in this country is astronomical. And, everyone doesn't have, grandparents, right? Like I'm really blessed, grandma, when Layla was born, grandma retired from the Navy. Like, hey, this is the first grandbaby, right? So we're tremendously blessed to have that. But a lot of people don't have that, right? And so they don't have that support. And now how do you get ahead if you're trying to pay $1,000, $1,400 on childcare? How do you save? How do you do any of these things? And so that's the plight that we find ourselves in. But when we had that community, people would watch the kids, people would teach the kids, people would do these things. We would teach each other how to become entrepreneurs and start a business. But as you said before, it's all this crab in a barrel mentality. I got to get mine in spite of you, right? And if you're doing something, instead of saying, hey, brother, you're doing this, I'm going to support what you do, I'm gonna just go ahead and start doing it myself, right? Because I think I can do it better, or I really don't want to help you out. It's just something about you, man. I just, I'll just do it. I'll just do it myself. So I'll start my own thing, even though you've got it, right? And so that's what you find. And then you see, okay, there's 5 and 6 different churches, right? Or you see there's 5 and 6 different restaurants, or you see there's 5 or 6 different barbershops, or you see, could you imagine if, the barbers at all, and I'm not picking on barbers, but let's say the barbers that come together and said, hey, you know what, we're going to get this really big building. Everyone's going to come to this one location. There's going to be 15 barbers in here. It's going to be like a luxury suite. And then we're going to franchise this thing off, and we're going to be under one conglomerate, right? The things that they could do, you're doing women's hair, you're doing men's hair, doesn't matter. You can do everyone's hair, whoever walks in, and you can get economies of scale in that way and pool your money and your resources together. Like, right on Callow, I think you got 2 black barbershops right across the street from each other, right? It is what it is. There's just the society that we find ourselves in, but we don't know how to work together to gain economies of scale and get ahead. We talked about this in another one of our conversations we had a few weeks ago, where we talked about communities coming over and all living under the same roof in rooms and pooling their resources and then buying a home, and then that family moves out and they keep repeating it, right? And so we've had that culture stripped away from us, and we don't know how to build it back because of integration, right? We have been told to value the individual over the collective. That was our conversation. And so we have got to dismantle that and rebuild it, right? And we cannot wait for, again, the dominant society to say, hey, you know what, it's okay. We're going to allow you to do this, that, and the other. We're going to say, sorry, we're going to give you reparations. You do need to give reparations, right? Tangible, and we're waiting for the bag, but at the same time, we've got to build ourselves up, because, ain't no point getting the bag if you're going to waste the bag. You know what I'm saying? How is it going to sustain over time? And you can say, well, it's our right to waste it if we want. Well, we need to create these institutions where we're building it back up. In the south side of Chicago, are people coming? I'm asking a question here. Are people coming from the outside and starting gangs, or is that ecosystem homegrown? So what I'm saying is, parents have kids. Kids grow up. They get into the street for whatever that reason is. Those kids have kids, right? Well, the kids that are having the kids were in the street already. So they're going to raise their kids in what they know, which is the street. Now you've got 2nd, 3rd, and 4th generation, folks from the street, and that's it, right? That's their philosophy, right? That's their loyalty. And so that's what it is. How do you dismantle that? Because that's more of a homegrown thing. Am I correct on that, or is that something different? Because I'm trying to wrap my head around how does it sustain? How does it continue to grow? Because that's Miss such and such's daughter or son. So how is now, the son that we used to play with now, killing each other?
So before I touch on that, you said one thing I just want to kind of clarify. We don't have 5, 6 different churches. We have 5, 6 different congregations. There's only one church. Okay. But in other words, but in you
got different buildings.
Exactly. There's only one church. Unfortunately, we all chopped up right now. But as far as the gangs go, at least in Chicago, I can speak from my era. All right. There was some very limited generational, passed down, like Big Brother, or whatever. But typically when I was growing up, that was, it was like, nah, if that's, you had to really fight for it. Like if you were like the younger brother or, the child, of a, somebody that was in a gang, you like had to really fight to kind of be in it. It wasn't really an acceptable thing. It was like, no, why would you want to do this? And so it was like kind of shunned. I don't know if that's really the case now. As far as continuing growth, it was usually, the fringe, people that really just, didn't have that older male influence, a positive male influence, strong positive male influence in their life, and I was kind of touching on this a little bit earlier, what I'm saying, at least for Chicago, growing up, it was like, if you move to a new neighborhood, what I'm saying, you was instantly like, you carried a stench from your last neighborhood. And so you wasn't like really a part of that new neighborhood until you know what I'm saying, got into it a few times, right? And now it's like, okay, yeah, we'll accept you in now, but until the end, no, you still got that stench of that other neighborhood on you or whatever else. And so, that leads to a lot of, people kind of, joining up or whatever, just simply, parents have to move. And it's like, okay, now you here and, yeah, you're going to get picked on, you're going to get rumbled on, I mean, yeah. And until we see that, like, all right, you ain't, we're going to find out who you are. What, we're going to test your mettle, you know what I'm saying? And see who you are. And some kids, they were protected, like either for their intellect or for their sports prowess. Like, okay, they got opportunity, no, gangs will refuse them, and it's kind of some of the stuff you see on TV, sometimes is loosely kind of, true. But just because like you have to get like the right endorsements, you know what I'm saying? So like, just because, maybe some lower level people say, yeah, leave them alone, that don't mean that like, that person's off limits yet. You know what I'm saying? It takes a few, you got to get the right type of endorsements, so like if the right people say, yeah, leave them alone, I don't care who it is, everybody gonna leave you alone, so it depends.
But right, so that goes to what I'm saying, right? This thing is generational and it goes back because when you and yeah, it's like what is that? What Baby Boy and Innocent Society. I think there's a whole bunch of different shows, that kind of play off of that trope or that experience. But if that's how it is, and you're going to be challenged, and the only way that you're going to escape is if you're, oh man, he's smart, he's going to do things, he's going to go to college, or you're an athlete, so we're going to give you a pass. We're not going to let you be a part of the gang. Then again, right? It's the dominant society that even though we're over here doing our own thing, we're still kind of going along and pulling the worst parts of that, capitalist, individualistic society. You know what I'm saying?
No. So that's not the only ways that you escape, that particular lifestyle. And again, my experience growing up, it's always a choice. It's not what many people think of where, what you see in the movies where like, they're actively like, hounding you and recruiting you or whatever. It's a choice.
Move a new family, move in and they'll pick on you. I mean, that's
yeah. But see, that's not about gang life though. That's just about the community.
Well, why would we do that? You're a black person moving into a community. You're new. Why would we put our arms around you and support you? And we got to test you and see if you belong here. I mean, what is that? That's crazy.
Yeah, it is, but that's Chicago.
Right? That's crazy.
Yeah, see that part right there, that's not about like gang life. That's just Chicago. I'm gonna tell you something. Growing up in Chicago, it is still very segregated. Okay, Jim Crow, yeah, it took root strong there. And there were certain places, certain parts of the city we knew like, hey, you don't ride on the bus through this part of the city at certain hours, because you're gonna get snatched off the bus. Like, no, you just don't ride through here certain hours. Okay, so very segregated. It's still very segregated. They're doing a lot to integrate the city, but it's more of gentrification than integration, unfortunately. And they've been pushing a lot of lower poor, call it what it is. They've been pushing a lot of poor black folk out of the city, plain and simple. Because we had prime real estate. Did not realize it. It was prime real estate. And people want to come back to the city. And I grew up with a skyline view of downtown Chicago every night. That's prime real estate, bro. I mean, Sears Tower, John Hancock, every night, skyline view, beautiful. They want it back. So now they're pushing, everybody out the city. Nah, can't have this no more, but my point back to the gangs was that wasn't everybody. It was just, that wasn't about gangs. It was just, about like, hey, you coming into the hood, because there, communities in Chicago are very tight. Now this is something else. They're very tight communities, because when you see like summertime come, somebody's going to bring out the radio and everybody's going to come out and we're going to start playing together. We're going to start partying together, and the whole neighborhood, like, yeah. Now kids, they're going to fight, amongst one another. And that's what they do. It wasn't like the grown folks going and picking on my mama and saying, oh, you came from this area. No, it's the kids, fighting against one another and like, okay, to be accepted into the neighborhood as a child. It's not like on a grown level.
Let me ask you a question, because see, I didn't grow up like that. So for me, it's like, what? This sounds crazy. I take my daughter to the park. She doesn't know anyone down there. She goes and plays on the monkey bars. Next thing you know, she's talking to some kids. She ain't never met them before. And there they go playing, right? And they're cool. So you saying, oh man, you moved to a new neighborhood, and now the kids got to test you. We a tight-knit community. But what you doing here? I got to see what you about. That sounds like it's not a gang, but the mentality and the treatment is the same. That seems crazy to me.
No, bro. It's not.
You're laughing. I mean, help me to understand.
Because listen, like I said, Chicago it's always been chopped up. Like I was saying, still very segregated. So you got different neighborhoods, different communities, right? And so like, there's these arbitrary borders, right, that will define a certain community, right?
Rev, we're talking about black people segregating. So why are black people making their own borders?
Because I don't know. I don't know. I don't have the answer for that one. So follow my train of thought, right? We're up here looking at the, back in like, I think it was like the 90s or whatever, they would call the young ones Thundercats, right? All these young Thundercats is out here wilding and looking at the OGs and saying, oh man, y'all old and this and that, and now that's a lot of West Coast talk that I do not comprehend.
So, what I'm saying is as the generations get younger and we get older, right? We're not as out there in the street and it's crazy and whatnot. There's a better way to do it, yada, yada, yada. And the younger ones are going to keep pushing the envelope more and more, which is what we see, right? I mean, there's a story of, I don't know if they're hip hop artists or they're connected to the gang. The guy dies, he urinates on his grave, right? So in retaliation, they go and shoot him up in the drive-through at McDonald's and kill his 7-year-old daughter, right? You got stories like this. Well, you aren't hearing like stories like that crazy, but stuff was happening. And, we're looking at these kids now and young adults and saying, y'all got to stop, all this murder and death and all this stuff is happening. But they just following what their parents, their grandparents, and grandparents taught them. Because when you moved into a new segregated black section, even being black, hey, who are you? Why are you here? We might not let you in here. And so that's a slave mentality, right?
No, so okay, so
like help me to process that.
So let me Chicago's a very unique organism. Okay, so growing up in my time, right, and prior, okay, and I was really like the last kind of generation of this, but it wasn't just like random violence where people just, oh, I'm gonna go shoot this person because they did this or that or whatever. No, you got to get permission. You can't just go and decide, you're going to go shoot somebody from a rival gang just because, they took your girl or whatever else. No, it's not how life works. Okay. You got to get permission, and you got to get permission from the right people. And, so it's not like, it wasn't like just chaos, whoever got a gun decide they're going to go shoot somebody. No, because there's repercussions, from within your own, gang or neighborhood or whatever else. Right. So during the 90s, they had what was called Operation Silver Shovel, where they went throughout Chicago and they locked up all of the, heads, all the like leaders of the gang. And that's fractured a lot of that. Well, not a lot, that fractured all of the gangs. Okay. And so then you start having these communities now where, let me see. Okay. So you've heard of like Vice Lord, right?
Right.
All right. I'm gonna make this on a real simple scale because there's many different types of Vice Lords, but we ain't gonna get into that.
Well, right? There's lots of different Crips and, and
okay. But see, on the West Coast has always been like, Crips over here and Crips over there is just, two different Crips.
Yeah.
Right. No. Okay.
And Black Gangster Disciples and all kinds of other stuff. Right.
Right. So like, if you had like conservative Vice Lords, right, and they were here in this one part of the city, right, but then you have more conservative Vice Lords over here in this one part of the city, right, even though they're in different parts of the city, they're still connected as one. It wasn't like, oh, we're this, conservative or that, no, it was all still connected. You know what I'm saying? And so because it was a head that was over all these different little spots, these posh works of networks of different spots or whatever. And so they took all of them away. That fractured the city. That is what has led to the rise of, gang violence in Chicago, because now there's no accountability. Everybody is kind of their own little chiefs. They become their own little chiefs, and there's no, overarching accountability now, and so that was what led to the real big spike of, Chirac and all of that, nonsense or whatever, and thank God I was gone by then. But yeah, now back to the crazy part that you can't understand the communities. Okay, think of it like this. As a young, I say between, maybe 12, 13 to 15, 16-year-old, you're full of a lot of testosterone. You got a lot of this male enzyme running around in you. New kid comes in the block, you feel like, hold on, he may pee on my pole. Let me make sure he know not to pee on my pole. And, y'all duke it out. You kind of, you're figuring out your pecking order in the community. Where are you going to be at, in the community? Like I said, it's not like the adults are, out there brawling. Oh, you got an apartment on the 3rd floor. No, it's none of that crazy stuff. We're talking about little kids, it's like, come on, or whatever. And it was generally the boys, girls have always known how to like just come together and knit, and we're going to double Dutch and, all this kind of crazy stuff or whatever, so it's usually the boys, you kind of, have schoolhouse fights and stuff like that. And you figuring out your pecking order, in things. And it's like, okay, So that's what it is. But overall in Chicago, the Black community is very, they're very close. They're very tight knit, and we're not, what you see on the media. what they try and portray Chicago as. It's not. Chicago is a wonderful city. You know what I'm saying? They got some really awesome people there. And I promise you that, what we see right now is a reckoning that, was done without thought, like I said, and you trace this back to Operation Silver Shovel, that caused all of this, with them trying to so-called clean out the police department and clean up the city all at one time, because Chicago is known for having corrupt police officers. At 13, I bought my first BB gun out of the trunk of a squad car. Okay. So yeah. And it wasn't like no, yellow, orange cap on it. This thing looked like a real gun, but that's what Chicago, was. But I think you had people, that had good intentions, but didn't realize, what they were about to unleash, and so you kind of have what you have right now. What's the answer of fixing it? I don't know, because I ain't the one that broke it, but they broke it bad.
Let's keep going down here if you don't mind, because I think that kind of gets to it again. I think what's great about this discussion is you grew up in it. So your perspective is very different from mine, being an outsider. And I'm listening to you and I'm like, well, I grew up here in the Pacific Northwest. And, that wasn't my experience. I mean, we were playing chess in third grade in an open concept school after I left Montessori. And so, new people moved in, and that's just my experience is very different than yours. And
bruh, look, ninth grade. let me tell you something, right? Ninth grade, right? My freshman year of high school, I was a freshman, right? And so I had 9 periods. My last 2 periods was home ed, right? And just so happened, my teacher, Mr. Pulaski, loved this guy to death. I won't say I love this guy forever for this, but he stayed in a neighborhood that was like right kind of close to where I was at, right? He was over by the University of Illinois. He stayed over in that section. So he knew about my area, right? And so the school that I went to, see, in Chicago, like when you're in 8th grade, towards the end of the year, you apply to these different high schools, right? And you apply to all these different high schools and you see which high school will accept you. And then, you kind of choose which high school you're going to go to or whatever. 8th grade, I was like, I ain't doing all that. I applied to one high school. That was the one my brother and sister was going to, and I don't care about nothing else. I'm going there, right? But that high school was in like a neighborhood in Cabrini Green where the Gangster Disciples, like they had control over in that area. They found out where I was living at, and they like, oh no, partner. You know what I'm saying? Every day, me and my friend, we both went to the same school. Our teacher, he would let us skip 9th period. He give us all of our work in 8th period. We skip 9th period, run out of the school, run down to the train station, get on the train and start heading home. Because if we waited to the end of the school day, the kids that actually lived in that neighborhood, they was finna, come try and jump us. And it's like, so every day freshman year, like we're gone. I didn't do 9th. I never did 9th period that whole year. Yeah, that was crazy. That was an experience.
And that's why I say, to get to the answer, to the root, we have to go back. The answer doesn't lie in our present.
No.
You are now. It actually lies, before you, because, when you moved to that area and that was your experience, right? Why were those kids acting that way? Where did they get that, Lord of the Flies? I'm listening to it. That's what it sounds like to me. This mentality of this is how it is and this is how we do, right? They have to be socialized into it. They didn't just come into it, right? It's like, we talk about it now. We grew up, again, I grew up in the Pacific Northwest for the most part. And, I'll use Layla because she was born here. I came from New York, at a young age. So, my experience, was a little skewed. But, she's just playing with kids. She's not thinking about, white and black and this and that. These are my friends. And that's really just it. She's not making these distinctions. But you guys are making distinctions just in your own in-group. And not only are you different, but we're coming after you, right? So that had to be from the parents and the parents' parents that have taught this, right? And so, yeah, you could say, Silver Shovel, took out all the OGs, and then now it's just kind of a free for all, right? But to me, this was a natural progression because they're already, you move it to a new area. The teachers, the adults are saying, hey man, we're going to let you go early so you don't get jumped, right? It's already there. It's got to evolve at some point in time. At some point, people are going to get tired, right?
Well, I already explained to you where that started from.
No, I know. But I'm saying, but we're talking about the progression, right? Eventually you're going to say, man, I'm getting tired of it. And for me, thinking about it, I'm like, man, I would be, I don't know what the sanction is for my own gang if I did something against the gang. But if you do something to me or mine, I'm not waiting for permission from the gang leader to tell me that I can retaliate. If that was my sister that he did, X, Y, and Z to, I'm going. You see what I'm saying? So I think that it's a natural progression of that's the way that it was going to go. So the mobs have been broken up in Chicago, right? I mean, you don't have the Capones and all that stuff anymore, but you still have the institution of that crookedness still exists, right? I mean, the bones of that are still in there, but people are snitching on each other, even in the white society that exists there too. So, it's morphed on both sides, but I'm just kind of speaking that out because I think ultimately we have to go backwards and undo. It's really easy for older folks to look at the youth now and say, hey, man, these guys are off the chain, man. Somehow we're going to have to, what are we going to have to do? They've lost it. And these kids today are yada, yada, yada. But ultimately, it is probably our grandparents and great-grandparents that have a lot of responsibility and accountability to why it's this way, right? Because if they had been embracing and saying, hey, look, you're running from whatever, and this is why you're here coming into this neighborhood, we're going to go ahead and accept you in. You're now fam. You know what I'm saying? And I kind of see that, in the some of the Black churches that I visited. I'm not talking about here in the county, but, you go in and sometimes they look you up and down like, who you and who you with, why you here? And then you come in and you're just like, man, I don't really feel welcomed here right off the bat, So it's like, all right, well, I ain't going here no more. And to really kind of bring it all the way back around, because we went from Afghanistan to Vietnam to Cabrini, Cabrini Green. We went up there all around the planet. But it's how do we move forward? And I think it really does take a shift in our own thinking, right? And our own self-awareness and self-analysis on where do we have our own gang mentality? Where are our blind spots where we're saying, you know what, this is mine. I got to protect my interests. I'm individualistic, or if it's just not me and mine, I can't let you in and exist. We have to dissect that individually and then make a plan to come together and then slowly build and show others in our community the blueprint so that we can create a change. What are your thoughts on that?
I think you're absolutely right. I think that's one of the things why, even though I'm sitting here yarning and I apologize, but I'm doing this because this is what the future is, like I explained, people that don't understand, that have never read the Willie Lynch letter, that you should go and read it. You'll understand the difference between the field and the house. And they've played that game a lot. And that's what creates, the type of environment that you hear me reminiscing on, surviving. But in order to, defeat that, we have to create our own. We have to create our own spaces, we were doing that, and we see what happened in Tulsa and Rosewood and other places where, it was such a threat that, they violently, destroyed it. So that should be a clue to us that it is something worth protecting and having and doing and going after. It was a P word I was going to use for that. But anyway, it's something that is worth us actually going after and pursuing, because there is value in that. Very much like I try and tell people about voting, people wouldn't, fight and try and make laws and try and keep people from voting if it was not something there to that. And so whatever somebody's trying to keep you from, you should definitely be very interested in, especially if they enjoy the privilege of exercising that particular right, or having, that particular luxury, and they're trying to keep you out of it. Then you should definitely pursue it. But as we continue to make our own spaces, create our own worth, our own value, and not try and measure up to the standards of another, like with the Golden Globe Awards and, all that mess. When we begin to appreciate and value what we offer to ourselves, what we bring to the table for ourselves, and we begin to recognize one another for what they're doing, and we're not looking to say like, oh, well, I got a Golden Glove. No, how about, you got a, Black Fist Award,
Preach. You know what? Let me jump in real quick.
Go ahead.
All right. So here's the deal, right? So this is what's so fascinating about it. You got the Oscars, you got the Golden Globes, you have the Emmys, right? And so we want recognition by the dominant society. Then we get the BET Awards, and we get some of the other ones. I think Essence will have some things or whatever. And then those things aren't quite as valued, right? And so we can make it valued, right? We're the leaders in culture, right? So if we said, you know what, the thing to get is that BET Award, and that means more than an Oscar, then you would have everyone coveting that, right? But it's them guys got that BET Award, but man, I need that recognition. I need that Oscar, right? So we really do have to change the mentality. And then it's like,
yes,
let us in. We want that. And it's like, no, you don't need to want that, right? Know your worth, know your value, know what you do is good and outstanding, right? And so for you, if we've got to work 3 times as hard to get half the credit, right? For those that actually do get those accolades, do you know how good they actually were to be recognized and to break through?
Oh yeah.
Like,
I
didn't
seen plenty of movies where I'm like, hold on, like phenomenal. But I'm finna tell you, let me touch back on that real quick.
Yeah, please.
That leads back to why you see the infighting between us, right? Because the other man says, hey, I only got 5 of these that I'm gonna give out to y'all. And so it's 100 of us, and we all understand the value in those 5. Like we all it's 100 of us in the desert. The other man say, I got 5 bottles of water, only 5 of y'all can drink. And what we gonna do? We gonna cut each other's throat because we've been walking 1,000 miles with no water, and now we got an opportunity at some water. Instead of saying, you know what, you 5, y'all go get the water, and we gonna pass it around each other. You know what I'm saying? But we just thinking about, self, because that's what he put in front of us. Is only 5 of y'all. So we ain't thinking in the terms of, wait a minute, we can do this another way. And so because we're all, fighting to get what someone else has deemed as valuable, then we see what we see. I mean, if you think about it, right, we're in a fiat system, right? The globe is in a fiat system. There's no intrinsic value to money other than what we prescribe to it. It used to be, it was backed by gold. No longer the case. It's now a fiat system. But why do people kill one another, for a piece of a piece of paper, because it's a certain color? There's no value to it, and so we're killing one another over things that hold no value, but we're not really recognizing that. We're not recognizing that we've just done something, damaging to our souls for something that has no value, literally none, no value other than what somebody else says it has. When we can create, and that's what threatens, global society until they can figure out how to really, control it. That's what really scared global society about the Bitcoin, was that somebody said, hey, guess what? I'll create something that has no value other than what people say it has. And instead of using, a paper dollar, we're going to use this electronic code, so you can create a fiat system around anything. But the point of what I'm trying to make is we're constantly fighting for what somebody else has ascribed value to, but we never fight for what we ascribe value to. Now, like you said, somebody killed my wife, my sister, something. No, look, I don't care if it's Chicago or not, bro. Look, you got to understand things. You know what I'm saying? It's intricate. It's intricate. Don't take it on face value of what I'm saying. It's levels to this thing. Okay. Somebody, look, yeah, I ain't feeling wait for nobody. Trust me. Okay. Anyway, the point being, we have to say, okay, I place value on Black life. Whether it's, it belongs to my personal family unit or not. I place value on that. I'm no longer going to sit by, silently and allow the system to continually, meticulously murder, my Black brothers and sisters and not do anything. I'm not going to sit back and watch the police rough up my sister, my cousin, or whatever else, because you feel like you need to, control this person to arrest them. No, I'm not going to do that. Like I said, Chicago's a different beast. I grew up in the city where we fought the police. You wasn't just coming in there doing any old type of thing. I don't know what's going on nowadays, but when I grew up, look, what, but we wasn't worried about them, pulling out their guns trying to kill us either. We knew that it was going to be a fist fight. Police, against, the gang, be a fist fight. And, some of us might get hauled off to jail or whatever, once they call for backup, the ones they could catch or whatever. But, it was a different beast at the time. Now, you worried if you sneeze, I'm just going to pull the gun and shoot you, and so it's a different mentality also in policing that needs to be addressed, because again, the its roots and its history as it has been has come from the overseer on the plantation. But we don't need policing. We need peace officers, people that are going to come to promote peace, and not police community. I think I kind of went left on where we started at there, but
I was gonna say
I was talking about economics and fiat currency, and then I get out to the police. But that's just how everything is so connected, man. It's all so connected.
Pilot change directions real quick.
So, bro, I'm telling you, it's all connected.
It's connected. And I want to make sure, because a lot of times when we talk about what we need to do as a people, depending on who is saying it, then it sounds like we're chastising our own folks, right? And then that becomes a red herring argument where, you latch on to that and then we don't address the issues. And so, at some point, yes, we have been victimized in numerous different ways that even continue to this day. But you kept saying the word we, right? And at some point, it's such a fine line between what has happened and what we have to do for ourselves, right? Into that institution. So when we think about the institutions of white supremacy or the institutions of oppression, right? Those things now, it doesn't matter who the person is. You can plug in any person in that institution is going to continue to, operate without missing a beat. That's why the Black judge can come and hug Amber Geiger, right? That's how Tim Scott can say we're post-racial, United States isn't a racist country. That's how Kamala Harris can say we're not a racist country, right? In the midst of all of these police killings. And so that's where we have to really understand that it's very nuanced, right? These things do exist, And there's some things that we've got to fix in our own communities. And it starts from an individualized level to wake up and say, okay, you know, here are my blind spots. Here are my issues. This is where I'm operating from a crab in the barrel mentality. Here's where I'm oppressing my own brother or my own sister. This is where I need to create space and growth and teach and learn and share and build that sense of community and bring other like-minded people together and then slowly change our community. And as those things are happening, right, we are rippling out into those that are going to work with us, right? And then we are, running for office and doing some of those other things and find ourselves in positions of leadership with a very different kind of voice. You've got the, the Black Caucus and, all these other Black institutions that have been here for a very long time that to me are quite frankly feckless and ineffective and need to be switched over, right? Because now they are part of the institution of they're just plugged into the machine, and the machine is just going to keep going. And if you're not going to be part of the machine, then you're not going to be in it, right? And so there's not enough of a sea change of people to dismantle the machine and rebuild it. So, I always want to leave people with some kind of action item that they can, because we got to talk about it and identify it, right?
Yeah.
Laugh about it, which we did. But how are we going to go forward and fix it? And it really does, there's an accountability that we all have to look at ourselves in first and then find ways to build out. And I think that's what you and I are doing in this space. And then hopefully others are watching and listening.
Tony Wallace.
Stop of their own situation and saying, hey, you know what? I too can, make these changes and then go forward, right? And then that is what you see. That has been my experience since I started this podcast and started working with more and more folks intentionally. And while at the same time trying to do some of the work, dismantling my own institutional oppression of myself and of other people.
I cannot agree more. I would just say, we need radical thinkers, people that's willing to say, it doesn't have to be the way that it's always been. We can do things whatever way we choose to, and I think we spend a lot of times trying to build things that imitate the dominant society versus, just thinking radically and saying, like I was saying with the fiat, currency system that we have, instead of just thinking real radical, like a Bitcoin or something and saying, hey, we can create value whatever way we want to and in whatever space we want to, not just monetarily, but just even, in our day-to-day living, we don't have to go to a grocery store to get food. We can buy land, plant crops, and feed our communities for free. We don't have to charge for food, but radical thoughts, we have to start thinking radically if we're going to really break the chains and break free and be our own people. We have to think, very radically. And maybe some people don't believe in that and they want to stay plugged into the matrix because it's easier. But, if we want our own and we want to be truly free, we have to be willing to give up what we think holds value right now, because the dominant society has attributed the value, everything that we value, the dominant society has placed it in its place and said, okay, it's this valuable or it's that valuable. Like I said, I'm autodidactic, but the dominant society says, hey, a Harvard education is a lot more valuable than being autodidactic. So who's to say that though? Our people our people. We've had a lot of self-taught individuals that we revere right now, that have contributed tremendous, things. But in today's society, will dismiss someone like myself. And I'm not saying that, and people, please, I am no genius. I'm barely literate thinking. I'm joking, but I'm no genius. But, there's people out there, that are autodidactic. They don't want to fit into society. They don't want to contribute, in that type of way. But that don't mean they should be dismissed. And I think we have to, give room and space for radical thinkers that are, that have thoughts of bringing us into a different space, together, that's positive, of course.
Well, Rev, I give you Preacher of the Week. And, what's powerful, and I think a lot of folks can really take note of it, in and out of the church, is oftentimes, one, we're afraid to share our opinion. Two, the institutions that we belong to, we may feel like we have to make sure that our opinions align with what we're aligned with, right? Because if they're not congruent, then it can cause harm onto the church or a school district or whatever the case may be. And so our Trevor spoken. And I've been in a lot of rooms with a lot of different leaders, from the church and other places. And it's like, okay, well, the conversation we were having, at the house, when our hands are sticky, and we're eating and throwing down is way different than what you're saying up here. Right. And so, if it's not going to translate, then we're not going to have that change. If we can't say it in the dominant society, but we can only say it behind closed doors, then how do we expect it to change? And how do we expect those that are listening to the prevailing thought, again, CNN, MSNBC, even Fox News, right? The folks that they have that come on that look like us, that are supposed to be advocating for us, that are saying things that are counter to what we know that are good, we're not speaking out on. And so going along to get along, and that's how you get a generation of the Black Caucus and, our Black politicians that ascend into these different positions, and you don't really see any real change. And we're still having to study on whether or not we should study, reparations, or we're having a study on the impact. What were they just saying the other day? We're going to have a study on the impact of, oppression or discrimination in housing and in other institutions. Like we
redlining, discussion on redlining.
Huh?
You said they're talking about having a discussion on redlining.
No, on well, not necessarily redlining, but economic impacts of discrimination in housing that still exists and other institutions. Right? They're still talking about studying these things. We know already. Why are we still studying it? Take action. And so that's the problem, right? So we have to. Well, there is racism in America, and there's discrimination, but it's all this, non-tangential, kind of talking points that are not steeped in anything that anyone can say, okay, well, this is what it is. How are you going to dismantle it and change it? So it's just a study. But then we can say, well, here's $50 million for AAPI, violence for the COVID Violence Act, right? And so, you can make these things happen immediately, and both sides of the aisle, 99-1, can vote to push that through immediately. But we're still, talking about studying, and I wonder how this is happening. And you know what? There's good ones, and there's good ones here, and there's just a few bad apples. But they say a few bad apples spoil the bunch. So it's rotten everything, and everything must be thrown in the garbage, and you got to start over. Because the other ones that are good, they're not speaking up. Because the rotten ones are going to do something to them so that they can't, right? Mm-hmm. So that's how you get things like the thin blue line and whatnot. And the thin blue line exists in, the halls of justice, the halls of education, the halls of, banking and economics, and everywhere else, right? So that's really what the issue is. So, again, Preacher of the Week, because you're able to be vulnerable and speak your mind. And it doesn't necessarily have to I don't want to say that's the wrong thought. I'm not going to say that. What I'm going to say is that it's authentic, it's real, it's how you feel. It's not I'm gonna give a shout out to Cheryl Nunez. She's the the VP of Equity and Inclusion. She came and spoke at one of my classes when I was teaching at the college, and she told my students, she said, don't be intimidated, about speaking your mind and your thought, and don't feel like you have to be the most eloquent, loquacious, articulate person in the room and use these 10-gallon words with multi-syllables. I'm summarizing what she's saying.
Yeah.
And just say how you feel, because often that's more honest and real than you trying to be eloquent in your speech and be some grand orator like Obama to get your point across. Just say what it is raw. And what you're saying is, hey, I'm autodidactic, if that's the word that you're saying. And here I am, I have a master's degree. I've gone to college. And so I have all this formal education. Well, we can come together and have a conversation and find a way to move forward. And I'm no higher than you are. You've got, your knowledge of growing up in the South Side of Chicago and all of your experiences and all of your education and theological
West Side,
the Bible. And then I have, book work and whatnot, right? Again, I only went to the 9th grade and then, skipped a whole bunch of years and then went back, right? So, but we can have these conversations, and it's not lording one over the other, but finding that space to say, hey, this is how I feel. This is what I think. This is what we need to do. And let's go forward and do it.
I'm gonna end with this because it's getting late. But I love talking with you. I could go another couple hours, but I got a couple things I got to do. I'm gonna always be who I am, bruh. I'm gonna keep it real, but at the same time, I'm not gonna be so raw where it's just off-putting. I try not to be off-putting, but I'm not gonna hide who I am, where I come from, anything else. All those things lead up to what you see today, and so that's just who I am. With that being said, we cannot try and curate our words, as you were saying, and soft touch issues, and then think things are going to change. If I don't never tell somebody truly, and this is what I think we were talking about earlier, if I never tell somebody like how they really making me feel, then how do they have the opportunity to adjust in that, and so, and I'm the type where I'm not going to hold grudges, so I'm going to say, hey, this is how I feel, right? This is what you did. This is how it made me feel. And even if that's speaking to society, like saying, hey, society, this is what you're doing, and this is how it's making me feel. Now, in the terms of society, unfortunately, is we've expressed our feeling, numerous times, and we continue to express it, and it's being ignored. So now, what I'm saying, my philosophy is, after I done told you several times, now it's time to take it to the next level, and I feel like we done told them several times. So I'm not the one to say what the next level is. Don't put that pressure on me. You don't want my answer. I'm gonna let somebody else figure out what the next level is. But in all sincerity, things have to change. We have to, get to a point where, things are progressing. And so I may not always get invited to the table because of the, who I am, what I say, and how I think, and that's okay with me. Because at the end of the day, I know I'm going to stand before, my Lord and Savior, and I'm going to have to answer for everything that I've said and done. And if I'm not true to me and true to him first, true to him first of all, and then true to me, I'm going to have to answer to that. And so I'm going to be true to him, and I'm going to be true to me when permitted. So, yeah.
All right.
And as I often end my shows with, that was my rant. That was my rave. I did not come to behave. I'm going to let you sign off, brother.
All right. Well, that is Rev. 2x2 studies. Every week we get together and have this riveting conversation. So we hope that you find this informative and that you're able to do something with it that will stir conversation in your circles. Always free to comment we look forward to hearing your comments and, extending that dialogue for the greater good. At the end of the day, I am on camera. This is the Conduit. That is Reverend Michael Ellington, New Horizons Baptist Church. About to studies. We will see you next time.
Amen.